Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another Raw review. Alright, I'm going to try to get through this the best way and the quickest way that I can. Had a procedure done to my hands, so right now I'm a little pain. So with that, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment, hit the like button, ring the bell, comment, let me know how I'm doing or what you agree or disagree with. But anyway, tonight's Raw was pretty decent. I knew it was going to be more of a talk fest and everything than what we got to see in the ring. So I was more expecting that, especially coming out the SummerSlam and getting a few title changes and stuff like that. So we knew that those interviews were going to be coming and stuff like that. But anyway, we start off with the OTC Roman Reigns. He comes out saying that he's you know, has no words, and he gives a shout out, to the people and everything. And he's talking about the match with him and Seth Rollins and saying that, he beat Seth Rollins and everything. And now he's trying to put that, on the other side of him and stuff like that, to move on and everything, and it was a good match, and stuff like that. And he says that he tells the people that he knows that it stings a little bit and stuff, and then everybody starts doing a little Seth Rollins song, and then Roman lets them go ahead and sing the song and stuff like that. And as they're doing that, then out comes LA Knight and stuff, and he congrats Roman, for winning the match, clean without no help, from the bloodline, you know, and stuff, so he congrats him for beating Seth and everything. But he calls Roman Reigns a fraud, and he wants what Roman owes him, you know, because with the bloodline, because of what the bloodline has done to him, when they were feuding, and every time that LA Knight was going for any kind of championship or any match to qualify to get to the title, it would be the bloodline, coming out, causing him to lose and stuff like that and everything. And then Roman Reigns calls LA Knight, a fraud. And then asks LA Knight, um, what has he done? Anything, if he's done anything big, you know, um, and stuff, what has he done? And then says, that he's tired of everybody, everybody moaning and groaning and everything, complaining, bitching, and stuff like that and stuff. And so he looks at LA Knight and he tells LA Knight, to step back and get in line and stop wasting his time. Then LA says he has one more thing to say to Roman, and he tells Roman that his aura is off and says to Roman that he's much cooler when he's not standing in front of him and stuff. And then LA says that he's earned it, you know, and time after time again, and Roman, and all 38 of his people keep interfering, stopping them from making progress as far as, going in and trying to win the title and stuff like that. And then LA tells Roman that him and Seth, they did a thing when they formed the Shield, and all the Shield was there to do for them to use the numbers and to sneak attack people to shield each one of them, even Roman, from guys like him. Then LA does this. He goes, Yankee, Oscar, uniform, Sierra, uniform, Charlie, Kilo, you suck. Oh man, he did that perfectly and stuff. Just like how the Shield used to come out and then they came through the crowd and stuff like that. You know, then he calls Roman a fraud, and that he's the biggest vomit, in the business. and that he's on another level because he holds the championship. Saying that Roman holds the championship, but don't. And then he told him, but don't get lost in the sauce. And then he says, brother, brother, and then tells Roman that he's not on his level, and that he's lightning in a bottle, and he's everything he wished he could be but couldn't. Then he tells Roman when he can figure out where to buy a pair, if he can't grow one, and then come back and let him know, and he will smack him back to the factory sense because he knows, and he says Roman knows, and that the whole universe knows. The uncrowned champion of this world, with everybody saying LA Knight, meaning that LA Knight, is a silent, champion, just like back when, even though The Rock didn't have a title, but he was a people's champion and stuff like that. And so now that's what, basically more of what LA Knight is saying and stuff like that to Roman and stuff, And maybe it might be this time that that again, LA Knight will get that chance, but he's not going to beat Roman. We all know that and stuff. Something has to happen to Roman in order LA Knight to get a title and stuff. It would be cool if LA Knight was to win a title, finally get that position and stuff. But I don't know if they're going to pull that trigger and let him do it and stuff. And then after he says what he says to Roman, then he drops the mic and then he leaves. And then we get the match with Javon Evans and Ethan Page. I mean, even though they've had about 4, 5, 6 matches together and stuff like that and everything, I mean, Javon Evans is going to do his thing. He's going to do all the high flying and stuff like that. Ethan Page basically going to do the ground and pound and stuff like that and everything. But in the match, Javon catches Ethan Page with the OG cutter, for the win. And then after the win and stuff, all of a sudden, Big Cass is back after 8 years or more. He's back in WWE and he attacks Javon Evans. I mean, and he destroys him. He dog walks, Javon Evans. And it was crazy, crazy and stuff. And the people thinking and look at it in another way, in the way that Big Cass was taking Javon Evans. It looked a little suspect. But anyway, we're not going to go there with that and stuff and everything. I thought, by Big Cass coming, because, everybody knew it was coming. Last week they showed a promo, showed his face, so we knew it was coming. But I thought it was coming probably like, since he's a big guy, maybe after, over there, what he did with Brock Lesnar, another big guy coming in, going up against Over. But I guess that's not the case and stuff and everything. But anyway, Javon wins the match. But boy, Big Cass destroyed him. And then you got Roman Reigns backstage, and he's talking to the Usos and Jacob Fatu and stuff. He's telling them that he doesn't want to go back to the old ways and stuff like that, because it doesn't work that way and everything, But he says since they're together as one in the family, they don't have time to be losing and stuff like that. They lost to, Solo Sikoa, LA Knight, and Royce Keys and stuff. And the Roman is saying that, we're Solo, that Solo should be there, and Solo should be the one getting his coffee if he needs coffee and everything like that. Then he's asking Jacob Fatu, why does Royce Keys, why can he be so up, and everything, keep talking about he's, a family member and part of the family. And then Roman is telling Jacob that he's not part of the family, and to trust no one and stuff. And then tells him, you know, then he goes on, he said LA Knight, talking about LA Knight and everything. And he's telling, the Usos and Jacob, not to mess with LA Knight, leave it to him. Just like they was talking about, when he was going up against Seth, and I think Roman was going up against somebody else, and he told him like, look, don't touch them. He's mine. I'll take care of the situation and stuff like that. And then Roman leaves, and then as Roman leaves, the LA Knight comes out and he said, hey, didn't I hear, that you guys can't touch me and stuff like that, and then he starts taunting with, with the Usos, and that was pretty funny, but it was pretty good. And then you got backstage Royce Keys going and talking to Jacob and everything, saying that he's still ten toes down with Jacob and everything, and that their family, like their brothers and stuff like that and everything, And then Jacob gets up and he tells Royce Keys, "Hey, look, I ain't your brother. You're not my family," and stuff like that. And then he makes a challenge to him and he said, "Hey, look, you know, gotta do something about this and everything." And so he issues a challenge to Royce Keys in a street fight and stuff. And then tells Royce Keys that he's gonna dog walk him and stuff. And then we got Liv Morgan coming out. She's talking about when she beat Io Sky and then how Io Sky, was the bravest person that came out and and fought for the for a title match, even though Liv hasn't defended that title since she's had it and stuff. She's had a few matches, but it never were no title matches. So at SummerSlam, she did have the match with Io Sky. She did beat Io Sky and stuff, to retain the title and stuff. And then she's talking about since nobody wants to come out, and challenge her, that there's no other people that will challenge her the caliber of Io Sky, that she's going to be the longest reigning women's champion of all time, you know. And then she said it's enough about her. Then she started congratulating Raquel Rodriguez, for winning the IC title from Ruka and everything and stuff. And then she talks about Roxanne Perez and everything, and that she's talking about she will beat, Roxanne Perez is going to beat Ruka, you know, and then that will prove that the Judgment Day, runs Raw. Then we get the match with Roxanne Perez and Toruka. I mean, it was an okay match and stuff. I mean, it looked good, and then there was some missed spots and stuff like that and everything, And so they're battling. And then at one point, Liv grabs Soruka's legs from the rope, and the referee saw it. So now it's a DQ. So Soruka wins by disqualification and stuff. But the match was okay and everything. And then as they, um, jump Ruka, then out comes Becky Lynch, because Roxanne gets in the ring and they start beating Ruka up, and then Becky Lynch comes down and stuff, and then, you know, um, she looks at Raquel and she tells, "Hey, look, I'm not here for you for the IC title." She said, "That's done. She already did that. She accomplished that, and she made the title, more prestige than anybody, who had the title and stuff like that." And then she looks around and she looks at Liv and saying, "You're who I'm after and everything." So, she said she hasn't, telling that Liv hasn't defended the title, in 100 days and stuff and everything, and that she was gonna beat her and everything and stuff, and saying that Liv is just walking around, prancing around, after WrestleMania, and all she's done is become a glorified valet and stuff, and then says that a woman champion should be, a fighting champion and not flirting, not a flirting one and stuff, and then she tells Liv that she's the worst title holder, of all time and stuff. And it's not just her saying it; it's everyone saying it, and the whole universe is saying it. And Becky tells Liv, unfortunately, things are about to get worse, you know. So, and I guess Becky is about ready to challenge Liv, for the world championship. And then Liv tells Becky that she should be at home, you know, with her daughter and taking care of her daughter, and not there, in the ring because she's, out of her league and everything. you know, but she's not, because she's here, in her face, and says, then she tells Becky and stuff, that she's jealous of her. And then Becky says, jealous because of what, and stuff. And then Becky tells her that her time is over and stuff. That sooner or later she's gonna get her. And then Liv is on this jealous thing, because Liv is saying that she's the greatest women's champion of all time, and then drops the mic, and then they leave. And as they leave, you know, um, out comes Stephenie Valquer. And then Stephenie Valquer, backs Liv up. She gets in the ring, and I mean, they brawl and stuff. And Stephenie Valquer takes out the whole Judgment Day. She takes out Raquel. She takes out Roxanne Perez, and then she takes out doggone Liv Morgan and stuff. And they brawl. And then Becky and Stephenie Valquer, they have a little standoff and stare at each other and stuff. And then we get the promo, with Oba Femi. Oba Femi, saying that, he's giving Brock his due and everything, saying that the match is good, going in the match and coming out of the match, that they found, new respect for each other and stuff like that, and stuff. And Oba is saying that, um, now that he's, won the title and stuff, that he's going to take the title. He's going to bring new people in and stuff like that. Um, and they're going to put the old, you know, with the old, and the new is going to prosper and stuff and move on and do better things, you know, and stuff. And then he told them, he's saying, like, if nobody likes what he's saying and how he's saying it and stuff like that, they can come see him, because he's the ruler, he's the destroyer and everything, and if you got a problem with it, come talk to him. And then as Oba is leaving, then out comes the Vision. And then Bron Breakker, he's starting to, him and Oba kind of look at each other and they have a little face off and stuff, And then Oba walks off, and then Bron Breakker, he's still looking and everything and stuff. He's in the ring because he's getting ready to have a match with Joe Hendry and stuff. And then as the bell rings, Bron Breakker is still looking towards the back. I mean, he's just looking to the back, not doing anything. And then Joe Hendry comes up behind him, and Bron Breakker, he kneels Joe Hendry. They get into, it and everything for a little bit and everything. And Joe Hendry is, thrown out of the ring and stuff. And then Austin Theory is coming up behind him, talking smack to him and everything. And then Joe Hendry, he takes out Austin Theory. And then as he's, struggling with Austin Theory, then Bron Breakker, he comes running around like he's going to spear him. But Joe Hendry, leapfrogs him, and Bron Breakker hits the stairs and stuff, And then Joe Hendry throws Bron Breakker back into the ring and stuff. And he's still messing with Austin Theory. And then Joe Hendry gets in the ring. He catches a spear from Bron Breakker, and Bron Breakker puts him down. 1, 2, 3 and stuff. And then Austin Theory gets into the ring, and then he starts to destroy Joe Hendry, after the spear that he got taken from Bron Breakker and stuff. And he was beating Joe Hendry down, and then all of a sudden, here comes Hiro Tosawa and stuff. And Tosawa comes into the ring and everything. He starts beating Austin Theory down and stuff, and he stands strong. So I'm sure somewhere next week that Austin Theory and Tosawa will be going up against a match with each other and stuff like that and stuff. And then, you got Jackie. She's back there talking with Big Cass and why she, and then she asked why she jumped Javon Evans, and he says it took him 8 years to get to where he's at, back to the WWE, and he's here to stack bodies, and Javon, was the first one, and then the interview was over. And then we get Chad Gable. He's coming out, talking about last night, was the best night of his, career. Um, then he thanks Penta and everything. Then he thanks the fans, you know, um, for just being there and stuff for him and everything. He said for the last 10 years, everybody was, with him, even though that ain't true all the way. I mean, he was cool, when he was with the Alpha Academy. Then he started treating them like trash and everything. And then he wanted to do the luchador thing and stuff. Then he got to that. Then he became American Grande Americano, and then he gets hurt, so he's out. Then Lucha becomes El Grande Americano, and when Chad came back and everything, him and El Grande, the first El Grande, original El Grande, however they did it with the El Grandes and stuff like that. And then also too, Chad get shouted out for one of his names. They would call him Shorty G. Back in the Attitude Era and stuff. And everything. I thought that was pretty cool when he said that and everything. And so he's just, Chad is saying that, he's there to make everything cool and everything. And he's going to be great and everything. He's going to deliver on his promises and stuff. And then out comes, Penta, and then Penta comes out and he tells, Chad that he deserves the title and everything. And then, he says he's going to give him his flowers and stuff like that, and that he has respect for him and stuff like that. And says he's a true luchador and one of the best, in the ring performers. And when he said that, then out comes Dirty Dom and JD McDonaugh, and Dom is saying, he's the Triple A champion and, stuff like that, and that he's the best Mysterio of all time and stuff like that. And then JD McDonough, he gets on the mic and he starts talking a little crap and stuff like that. And then he says, hey, you know, um, that they will take them out, at any time. And then Chad said, okay, anytime. So that means you want, to do it tonight and stuff like that. And then Penta say, hey, let's not wait. Let's get a referee and stuff. So a referee comes down. We get the match with Chad Gable and Penta versus, Dominic Mysterio and JD McDonough. And so the match was okay and stuff. It wasn't really too bad. It was good and stuff. I mean, it was it was a pretty good match, and stuff. Then we get hit. Then Penta hits Dom. Well, as things get out of control and stuff, Penta, you know, um, gets the title and stuff because Dominic he put a hammer in his boot and stuff, and he was gonna do the 619, but Chad Gable caught him and everything. He seen the hammer in his boot, so he took the ring announcer's hammer out of Dom's boot and hands it to the referee and stuff. And then as Dom is on the rope, Penta grabs the title and he nails Dom and everything. And then Chad, does this weird, crazy suplex on Dom, for the pin, and they win the match and stuff. Then you got backstage with Bron Breakker asking Paul Heyman, he's asking where Obafemi is and everything and stuff, because Obafemi, got in his way and everything and stuff like that, and then Paul Heyman is like, hey, look, I don't know where Obafemi's at and stuff like that. And then Bron Breakker tells him, like, okay, good, because I thought you guys, were becoming friends, and then walks away. And stuff, and you can see the look on Paul Heyman's face. He kind of a little bit, he got a little bit scared, might even tinkled on himself. But anyway, Then we get the match with Jacob Fatu and Royce Keys. This match was a good match. It was brutal. It was pretty much back and forth. You got these two big guys, and then they, putting each other, through a table over the barricade, doing weird clotheslines and stuff like that, and everything. And the match was it got hot, it got heated, and stuff. It was what you would expect, from Jacob Fatu and Royce Keys, especially Jacob Fatu trying to prove something to Roman Reigns and stuff. But the match went on. It got brutal, brutal. I mean, brutal, brutal. And then all of a sudden, Jacob hits Royce Keys with the Tonga choke hold, or Samoan choke hold, whatever kind of choke hold you want to call it, and everything. And it puts him out. And the referee calls the match and everything. And then Jacob just goes off the chain. And he just beats the living tar out of Royce Keys. I mean, he had him in the corner, pillowed the post, pillowed the post. Then he took a chair, wrapped it around Royce Keys' head. He goes from one turnbuckle to the other, and he nails Royce Keys and everything. And oh man, Royce Keys got blood coming all out of his mouth and everything and stuff like that. I mean, he did him. Whew, I mean, he did him shrewd, shrewd. And then Roman comes out. He looks down toward the ring. He puts his finger up and everything, and they acknowledge, the bloodline between him and Jacob Fatu and stuff and everything. And that was the end of, the match. So Raw was pretty. I mean, it was decent. Some of the matches were kind of drawn out and stuff, but we get Becky Lynch back, we get Stephenie Valquer back, and now we got Big Cass back. I don't know how long he's gonna. Excuse me. I don't know how long Big Cass is going to be around, or what they have for him in the future, or what's going on and stuff like that. But then we'll see. We'll just see. I mean, Big Cass is kind of old and stuff, so I mean they're bringing back old characters. We need new people coming in. We need people coming out of Evolve, or people coming out of NXT or something, man, to get, on the main roster and get new faces in and start pushing them, to see what it's going to be like for the future of WWE. And if you agree, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Let me know how you're feeling and everything. My hands are sore and stuff. But with that, thank you for watching. God bless. Deuces. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you.